Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show, broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studios. Mr. Randy Wang's at the sports desk in Culver City.
John, the LA County Board of Supervisors is deliberating how we're going to deal with these street takeover sideshows that are causing mayhem throughout the county of Los Angeles and everywhere else. Hilda Solis fights back tears as she dares to question, maybe we have to arrest these people.
And also, I think there probably has to be, I hate to say, a little bit more enforcement here, because the people are using vehicles in many ways that are not their own. They rent them, or they take them from some other owner and misuse that property. So there should be, I think, some consequences in terms of making sure that we're all on the same page here.
Why is she so afraid to offend the criminals?
Because she doesn't want to throw anyone in prison. They waited until now to take this subject on anyway. You know why they waited this long?
Why is that?
Because you can't talk about donuts and keep Sheila Kuehl engaged.
Sort of, snowflake weepies.
Quite frankly,
800-222-KABC is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It's a pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is the author of Liberal Misery, available online at Amazon.com. You can get him online at eddiescarry.substack.com and follow him on Twitter at eScarry, 2 R's in Scary. Eddie Scarry, welcome.
Hey, John. Happy to be with you.
Well, thanks so much for stopping by. Let's talk about the drama that Gavin Newsom is now involved in. That was all created by him. You could see this drama coming a mile away back when he went on Joy Reid's show on MSNBC after he appointed Alex Padilla to fill the remainder of Kamala Harris's U.S. Senate term. He was asked point blank if he were to get another vacancy in the U.S. Senate, if he would appoint a black female to fill the slot. He said that he would, and the black community believed him. Well, now it looks like, given Dianne Feinstein's frail health, there is a chance that there's going to be another vacancy for a U.S. Senate seat in California. Recently, the governor was asked on Meet the Press if he intends to keep his promise by appointing a black female. In fact, let's go ahead and listen to that exchange.
Again, that won the black and white movie days. That was not too long ago. Her staff is still extraordinarily active, and we wish her only the best. Her term expires. She's not running for re-election. So this time next year, we'll be in a very different place.
Is it fair? Do you feel as if the staff is fulfilling, can do the duties?
Yes. I don't think it. I know it. We're working extraordinarily closely
You don't
together.
feel as if the state's losing out by not having a more active voice?
Maybe missing town halls or more active. But, Senator Padilla was just in the office a few days ago. We were comparing contrasting issues and advocacy, and we're aligned with Feinstein in her office.
Sounds like you hope you don't have to make another appointment.
No, I don't want to make another appointment. I don't think the people of California want me to make another appointment.
Because you'd end up appointing both seats. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think that's, that said, it's my job, it's my responsibility. If we have to do it, we'll do it.
You're going to abide by your pledge?
Yeah, interim appointment. I don't want to get involved in the primary.
So no, you would not appoint anybody that is filed for this race?
It would be completely unfair to the Democrats that have worked their tail off. That primary is just a matter of months away. I don't want to tip the balance of that.
But you're going to abide by, it would be essentially a caretaker, an African-American woman.
We hope we never have to make this decision, but I abide by what I've said very publicly on a consistent basis, yes.
Okay, so that means it's not going to be Congresswoman Barbara Lee, who's currently running for the seat, and she is furious with the governor's statement, saying that what he's essentially doing is tokenism. He's treating black women like their vote belongs to him, and that by putting a caretaker in there, he is denying black women an opportunity to hold that seat. And she stops right up to the line of calling him a racist, but she tiptoes real close to it. Your thoughts on all of this?
Well, I had not heard the clip that you played. I had seen some of that interview. I had heard about a little bit about this specific issue, but just hearing the word caretaker come up in this way and treated so casually by Chuck Todd, and I guess that's the way the conversation is evolving around this. I'm very surprised. It's kind of a cringe, kind of an awkward, kind of an uncomfortable term to be using in this context, but I guess that's the way they're going to do it. But the overarching issue for me with Gavin Newsom is why is he running around talking on a national platform and making these type of pledges that are meant to virtue signal in a national way as if he's running for something? I don't think he is. I don't even know if is he up for another term? I don't even know. But he's already said that he would not be the next, if something happened with Biden, he would not be the next one in line. That would be Kamala Harris, and he would have absolutely no interest in running. So I can only assume that he thinks that he needs to, I guess on one hand, maybe he needs to keep his name out there for the future, for a future national profile run. Or my more likely guess is that he just can't help himself. He's like he actually kind of reminds me in this way of the Trump of circa 2011, which was when Donald Trump was once again pretending to run for president, and obviously he eventually came to do it, put his money where his mouth is, but he was pretending to run for president. And then he had to go on every single Fox show to talk about how he would do things if he was in the same position as Obama, how he would do it, why Obama had it wrong. That's what Gavin Newsom reminds me of, and it's just weird because again already he said that he's not running for anything. He doesn't, and yet he talks as if any of this stuff matters. It's just very bizarre.
Why do they constantly box themselves in like this? And I say this meaning not just Newsom promising to appoint a black female to the U.S. Senate, but Joe Biden did the same thing. He promised that he would appoint a woman to be vice president. Then it became a black woman. He promised to appoint a black woman to the first opening he had on the U.S. Supreme Court, and that's how we got Ketanji Brown Jackson. Why not just say, look, if I get an appointment or I have to make an appointment, I'm going to look at people from all backgrounds, very diverse backgrounds, but I'm not going to promise that I'm setting aside this slot for a certain type of person. When you do that, you have no place to go. And look how Joe is paying for it now. Look how the Democratic Party is paying for this now, where you have a vice president who is more unpopular than an unpopular president, and they're probably going to have to stick with Joe because there's nothing they can do about the Kamala problem, which is what they're all faced with.
Yep, 100% true. And I was thinking about that just earlier this morning, or maybe it was last night, I can't remember, but 100% true of the point you made about boxing themselves in. First and foremost, because like you just said, of Joe Biden saying, well, I'm going to have a black female vice president. And I knew at the time, I don't know what happened since then, because I remember in 2020, I knew at the time it was going to be Kamala Harris well before, because I thought she was, in my mind, just a little bit. I knew of her, the performances I saw of her in the Senate, and just based purely on, the way she composes herself. I thought she was the most qualified. I thought she exuded competence. I don't know what happened between when I thought that before the 2020 election and today, or even shortly thereafter the 2020 election. But something happened with her that I look at her and I'm like, that's not the person I thought should be vice president. But now, yes, again, to your point, that completely boxed himself in, because now I'm sure that Joe Biden himself would like to say, you know what, I know I can't do this. I'm not up to the task purely by age or whatever it is. If it's just, his time has run out. But now what's supposed to happen? Well, there's not a strong bench there. Kamala Harris, I'm sure, feels, and not unreasonably so, that it's her turn next. She is the vice president. She is the person who helped him get to where he needed to be by nature of his stupid promise to everybody. And yet everyone knows she can't do it. So now they're boxed in, and I think another example of that is this immigration crisis that we're seeing, the border crisis. You've got the media, it's, first and foremost said, day in and day out under Trump, because he said he wanted a wall, he wanted to secure the border. Well, that's xenophobia, that's hate. That's racism. Well, now you have Democrats that are prominent Democrats who are having to deal with the issue. We're talking about New York City and other places, but New York City, I think, is where it's been the loudest. You have prominent Democrat New York City mayor, prominent Democrat governor of the state, all saying, this has to do with the Biden administration. He's not doing what he should be doing. He should help fix this problem. He should be helping us, and he's completely leaving us out to dry. Well, the media can't call them racist, can't call them hateful and xenophobic, and yet they should be by their own standards, and yet they won't do it. And the way they're talking, I give some credit to the governor of New York and Eric Adams in New York City for actually being, showing some courage and coming out there and saying the things that are on its face true, even if it is against their own party and against their own leader of their party. But this is the issue you run into when you do these short-term, promises and declarations, all for political benefit. It's like you said, you box yourself in, and Democrats they're running into that every single time, and it all has to do with just how freaking insane they drove themselves over Trump.
Well, and you mentioned the border. This is like the worst case scenario for any state or local elected Democrat, because you have two different aspects of the Democratic coalition colliding. You have the open border crowd, the people who think that it's racist to enforce any kind of border policies, going right up against the public employee unions, because all of these people showing up all at once, needing a lot of services, it's blowing the budgets. It's blowing the budget of New York City. It's blowing state budgets. It's blowing budgets all over the country. And Eric Adams is responsible for making sure that he can pay his bills. And if all of a sudden you have this huge expense that you didn't account for, you're going to have to cut services. And when you cut services, that means you cut into the public employee unions, who are the ones that put these people in office.
Right. And I think ultimately what it is, they're running into the inevitable, and it's that something has got to give. And it's either going to be them or it's going to be you. Make your choice. It kind of reminds me also of, the white men who find it on the left, the liberal white men. Gavin Newsom's probably one of them. I'm sure I could probably look a quote up. But the one I'm thinking of, actually, I can't even remember his name, but he worked for Bush. He then wanted to run for, I don't know if he was running for governor or lieutenant governor of Texas. But he used to work also as an ABC talking head on ABC News. And he had said during 2020, it's time for the white Christian male, the straight white Christian male, to step back, give other people a seat at the table. And then what did he do? He runs for governor. It's like, okay, well, is it not, shouldn't you be putting your efforts behind somebody else other than the straight white Christian male? Well, no, he thinks he's not the one who has to give it up. No, it's the same thing with, liberals in New York or in California or in Massachusetts, wherever it is. It's fine and good. There's an excellent episode of The Daily, the New York Times podcast, The Daily, that came out a few days ago just about this very issue. And what the correspondent on there said was these people are finding out that when you're so far removed from the issue, you can say whatever you want. You can signal your virtue. You can say these are the principles. You can say it as loud as you want, scream from the rooftops that I believe everyone is allowed here. I believe in everyone should have a roof over their head every single night. Everyone deserves a right to an education. Everyone deserves, on and on and on. And yet now when it's put at your footstep, now I realize it's me who has to foot that bill. It's me who has to create room. It's me who has to create the opportunities for these people. And that's always going to come at a sacrifice. And now they're finding that out. It's a very painful awakening for a lot of these people.
Matthew Dowd, by the way, is the consultant that you referenced who ran for lieutenant governor in Texas. The Democrats weren't always totally open borders. You go back and you look at Jim Traficant or even Harry Reid. You look at the policies of Bill Clinton. They don't sound anything like the Democrats of today. Do you think, given this crisis and how it's impacting the public employee unions and these big city budgets, we're finally going to start to see a diversity of thought within the Democratic Party on the border?
It's a really interesting question because literally probably within the last hour I was talking about this with my colleagues. Even if you put, with the way that the ballots, mail-in ballots, and early voting, and it's an election season. It's no longer election day. We have an entire season of this stuff. With the way that they have set the conditions for voting, if you want to even call that anymore, casting ballots is probably a better way to put it, mailing in ballots. Almost so long as you put a D beside someone's name, there's a very, very strong chance that person is going to get elected. No matter how crazy they are. I mean, really, you think California, you've got some problems out there. Chicago is really where it's at. Look at that guy who they elected as mayor. That guy is an absolute moron. And like he's like the closest thing, if you would think of, like, if you could dress up in a sophisticated way the Joker from Batman, dress him up and put him in office and see what he can do. That's what we're looking at. He is, I can't even think of his name, but he's a former teacher union guy. I think the lobbyist for the teacher unions or something. Just an absolute insane person, and he's destroying that city even worse than anyone anyone thought it could possibly be. So I don't know. I mean, the answer to your question, I'm not hopeful about that.
Eddie Scarry, author of Liberal Misery, available online at Amazon.com. You can get him online at eddiescarry.substack.com and follow him on Twitter at eScarry. Eddie Scarry, thanks so much for stopping by. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, John.
If you want to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, if you want to go back and listen to a podcast of our interview with North Dakota Governor and current candidate for president, Doug Burgum, that's easy to do.
That's right. I just posted it. Go to KABC.com, click on podcasts, or go to the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can search for The John Phillips Show on YouTube and look at the episode titled Doug Burgum, which includes the interview with Doug Burgum.
And Randy, later on this week, we're going to be in Century City.
That's right. It's just a few days away, noon to 3 this Friday. John and I will be broadcasting live from the Gelson's in Century City. The Gelson's Food Market in Century City has their own wine bar, so you know we got to go. Come on down, hang out with us, have lunch, maybe get the burger, maybe have a tasting or a beer. It's going to be a great time. It's a Friday. It'll be a Jimmy Buffett Friday, so enjoy yourself. We're going to be there all day from noon to 3, so come on down, take some pictures. We're going to be giving away some stuff, even maybe a T-shirt, but we'd love to see you. The Gelson's in Century City at the Westfield Shopping Center. Real easy to get there. We'll see you there this Friday, noon to 3.
We just spoke with Eddie Scarry about the mess that Gavin Newsom's gotten himself into. He went on Joy Reid's program on MSNBC and said that if he gets to appoint another U.S. senator from the state of California, it would be a black woman. However, he didn't give the whole story. That happened this weekend, where he said it wouldn't be a black woman currently running for that office. It would only be a caretaker.
Here's that exchange.
You're going to abide by your pledge?
Yeah, interim appointment. I don't want to get involved in the primary.
So no, you would not appoint anybody that is filed for this race?
It would be completely unfair to the Democrats that have worked their tail off. That primary is just a matter of months away. I don't want to tip the balance of that.
But you're going to abide by it would be essentially a caretaker, an African-American woman.
We hope we never.
What just happened?
We hope we never have to make this decision, but I abide by what I've said very publicly on a consistent basis, yes.
Nobody knows how to vocalize exasperation like Gavin Newsom.
He makes all kinds of strange noises.
I'm just going to save that one. I don't know what I'll ever use it for, but I feel like it would be a waste to not save it. So I'm just going to call this Gavin. Bleh.
How do you spell that?
I'm going to go LMUAH.
Well, Gavin's position has Oakland Congresswoman and candidate for U.S. Senate Barbara Lee all the way pissed off.
And I want you to be all the way pissed off.
That's right. So Barbara Lee, Congresswoman and candidate for that Senate seat, went on with Abby Lee on CNN in an interview that CNN...
Wait, Abby Lee, that's the woman from Dance Moms.
Abby Phillip. Excuse me. Abby Phillip on CNN. In an interview that CNN couldn't post on their freaking YouTube page for some reason, so we had to pull it off of Twitter. But here it is. Barbara Lee and Abby Phillip. Not Abby Lee, excuse me. I got my Lees confused.
That would be an interesting interview.
I just want to read for the audience what you said in a statement today. The idea that a black woman should be appointed only as a caretaker to simply check the box is insulting to countless black women. We should note here that Chuck Todd was the person who used that language, caretaker. But I just want to ask you to start us off here. Does Governor Newsom have a point in saying that he wants to avoid getting involved in the ongoing primary of which you are a part?
Thank you, Abby, for having me tonight. And let me
Wait, what did she call her? Amby?
Play that one more time.
Thank you, Abby, for
Amby?
Thank
That's
you,
what you
Amby.
take to go to sleep.
Thank you, Abby, for
Amby.
Thank you, Abby, for having me tonight. And let me just say a couple of things. This is really about accountability. And I applaud the governor when he said that he wanted to appoint, if there were a vacancy, of course there's not, but should a vacancy occur, that he would appoint an African-American woman without conditions, no strings attached. And appointing, quite frankly, someone...
Oh, boy.
Yep, we got one.
And appointing, quite frankly, someone to hold the seat just until an election is conducted with the commitment not to run for the election is really, truly insulting. An African-American woman, if appointed, should be able to make a decision whether she wants to run or not. She should not be constrained by being told that it was only as a caretaker.
What about the filing deadline that's coming up in a couple of weeks?
Oh, yeah. Because of the presidential election, we're not voting in June this next cycle. We're voting in March.
So if I'm hearing you, you're saying here that the issue is...
That's Amby.
Hi, Amby.
So if I'm hearing you, you're saying here that the issue is that he would want this person to not desire to keep this seat long term. But I should probably ask you, I mean, do you want to be potentially considered for an appointment to this seat if it opens up?
Well, I mean, that's what her campaign chair, Ro Khanna, floated months ago.
The answer to that question is duh.
But let's see Barbara Lee, who speaks for me, sidestep that one.
Ari, listen, I am...
Wait, what is her name now?
Ari, listen...
Ari.
She's called her everything but her correct name.
We have Amby and we have...
Ari, listen...
Ari. Is Barbara Lee British?
Barbara Lee speaks for me.
Ari, listen, I am running to be the next senator of California. I actually filed my papers after Senator Feinstein announced that she was not running for re-election again. I am very focused.
That would have been a perfect shot to take at Katie Porter, but she didn't take it.
Give it time. She will.
I am very focused on winning this election.
By the way, politicians speak. When you listen to as many interviews as Johnny and I do, as soon as you hear any person who's being interviewed say the word, what I am focused on, you can tune out. They're not giving you a real answer to your question.
No, she's just going to run through the laundry list.
Announced that she was not running for re-election again. I am very focused on winning this election.
You're in third place.
The point is, if the governor has an opportunity to make an appointment, and in fact that there is a vacancy, whomever he decides to appoint should not be prohibited from running for the seat. Again,
she's getting nervous now.
Well, she's pissed off.
Or did she forget the interviewer's name again?
This is her one shot at winning. In every poll I've seen, she's not only coming in third place, she's coming in a distant third place. Not even black voters are voting for her.
Well, she's been in Congress for a very long time, has been active in California politics for a very long time, and nobody knows who she is.
No. And the power brokers within the Democratic Party don't want her. They regard her as being too old. They want Adam Schiff in that seat. Nancy Pelosi has already endorsed Adam Schiff. They all hate Katie Porter because they think that she's obnoxious, and they regard Barbara Lee as being over the hill. Because of that, Newsom is in a bind. If he were to appoint Barbara Lee to fill the Senate seat, if a vacancy were to occur, then she would be the odds-on favorite to keep the seat. And the Democratic Party power brokers wouldn't be able to give it to Adam Schiff. So he can't do that. He's in a no-win situation here.
The seat, again, African-American women deserve representation. Representation matters. And there are 0 African-American women in the Senate. So why preclude an appointed woman, black woman, from running?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point. I wonder, when Gavin Newsom had another opportunity after Kamala Harris left the Senate to appoint a black woman to fill that seat and didn't take it, do you think that was a mistake?
I mean, that's what got him in this mess to begin with, because Joy Reid asked him that question. He's like, I'm going to appoint a black woman.
Now, this is a tough question for her because they're all on the same page politically as Alex Padilla, so she doesn't want to diss him, but she absolutely wanted that appointment herself.
The governor made his own decision, and he decided who he wanted to appoint. However, I think the critical point is we're talking about accountability. The governor indicated that he would, if another vacancy would occur, that he would definitely appoint an African-American woman. And that's the commitment he made. He understands diversity. He understands why representation matters. And so
he is a white man.
And so to be able to appoint someone and then say to a black woman who has been the backbone of the Democratic Party, who's helped elect Democrats all over this country, it's time that we have a seat at the table. And to say that black woman would not be able to run for that office is really, again, it is insulting. And in fact, it says that a caretaker is all that would be necessary for the governor to appoint.
That's right. Gavin Newsom keeping black women down.
And the funny part about all of this is he thought by coming out and saying, this was during the recall election, by the way. So he wanted to make sure that black voters turned out, and he wanted to make sure that black voters turned out in large numbers. So he needed to do something to excite them. He made that remark during the heat of that campaign when he was actually down in the polls. He came through and won the campaign and thought, okay, I'm free and clear. I don't have to worry about any blowback from that promise. But now that it looks like he might have to make an appointment, whatever benefits he thought he was going to get out of this promise are gone because she's running around the state. She's in the newspaper. She's on television. She's all over the place talking about how this guy is dissing black women. So no good deed goes unpunished, Gavin. Remember that.
For him to meet his commitment to black women, is that what you're saying? That
yes,
he views it as the extent of his commitment there.
Yes, and I don't think he really means that because I think he understands that representation matters. But once you set up a barrier, and black women have to deal with barriers each and every day in the political arena, and once you set up a barrier and say that this person cannot run, if in fact you accept this appointment, then you have really precluded full representation. I mean, African-American women deserve a seat at the table, not for 6 months or 3 months or a year.
There you have it. Barbara Lee is not happy with Gavin Newsom. And she gave us a quite frankly.
She did.
If you want to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Well, we've got a perfect pairing request. You know, sometimes when you talk about pairing, it's pairing Pinot Noir with salmon, or it's pairing drops together on this show. Someone emailed us about Gavin Newsom's newest drop, and he's trying to figure out what would be the perfect pairing with it. And while one listener said it would pair great with Barbara Ferrer, the better pairing might be this paired with this.
But it just didn't feel big enough.
I'd stick with the Pinot Noir. Well, the California State Legislature and the LA City Council loves to regulate every aspect of our life. And Randy, I saw something today that surprised even me.
What's that?
Apparently, they now want to require everyone to have air conditioning at their house.
So we all got to go down to Walmart and get one of those cheap-ass wall units that fails in 10 minutes?
Do swamp coolers count? What if you just leave the door to the fridge open? Now, I love air conditioning. We live in a place where it's hot. And when it's hot outside, I like to crank that AC up so I'm wearing a sweater indoors. But if I don't want air conditioning, why should I be forced to have it?
Because they don't want you to die of heat exhaustion.
If you live on the coast, you probably don't need it unless you absolutely want it. I remember hearing that as a child. We live by the coast. We don't need air conditioning. Yeah, except for about 2 weeks a year where you sweat bullets at night. That was just my parents being cheap. And don't think for 1 second that I wasn't on to them.
You got to understand, though, if we require every single person to have air conditioning, we no longer need to turn libraries into cooling centers. So even in a heat wave, the homeless can do what they do on those computers, and it will be not interrupted.
Well, here's something else to think about. We're all going to be required to have air conditioning, yet we don't have an electric grid that can keep the current air conditioners on. And no one can afford to pay their electric bill. I've said this before, Randy. It's almost as if they haven't thought this thing through.
You think?